The Miami Hurricanes coaching staff just got stronger. Here's why Terry Jefferson can make an impact on the DBs.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and they'll give you $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we're going to talk with friend of the show, Phil Russomanno, who was closely covering the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl. We'll talk about all the former Canes who are about to be and hoping to be drafted and their stock, including probable number one overall pick, Cam Ward at quarterback. I will give you guys my stock watch for spring football coming up. Spring football at the U is going to start on March 3rd. I'm going to give you 5 players to watch in 4 different categories. I'll give you 5 veterans to watch, 5 transfer players to watch, 5 young ascending players, and 5 true freshmen that I'm going to have my eye out for when spring football begins. But first and foremost, folks, Miami Hurricanes have just made an addition to the staff. First reported by Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U on Tuesday. The Hurricanes are hiring Terry Jefferson, a familiar name because he's worked at Miami before. He's been most recently the defensive backs coach at Jacksonville State. He is coming back home to South Florida and back to the University of Miami. Now, first and foremost here with Coach Jefferson, let's offer what we know about the clarity of the exact role he's going to have at Miami and how it impacts the structure of the coaching staff. So our understanding is Terry Jefferson is officially going to be an analyst. He's not technically going to be taking up one of those on-field coaching roles, but since last year, the new NCAA rule in effect, analysts can actually do hands-on on-field coaching now. So there's not a whole lot of difference these days for what makes an analyst versus what makes an actual coach. So Terry Jefferson, even if he's filling technically an analyst role, he's going to be able to do hands-on coaching with Miami Hurricanes defensive backs. And to me, there's a few reasons why bringing in Terry Jefferson from Jacksonville State is a really good move. Reason number one, he's already familiar with Miami and with Mario Cristobal. I mentioned Coach Jefferson has been here before. He worked at the University of Miami at a previous stint for 3 seasons up until 2022. And that year, he worked under Mario Cristobal and under former Miami defensive backs coach Jamil Adai. And also, Terry Jefferson, he worked with former Miami DBs like Cameron Kinchins, James Williams, Tyreek Stevenson, DJ Ivey, who all got drafted after that 2022 season. So he's already got the University of Miami familiarity. And for Coach Jefferson, he's a South Floridian. So it's a good homecoming for him. Former defensive back at Miami Booker T. Washington. And Terry Jefferson, again, if you're going to work on a Mario Cristobal staff, being able to recruit, that's non-negotiable. And Coach Jefferson has that ability and those connections, regarded as a very good recruiter. He has plenty of connections in the area, being part of that South Florida high school fraternity, a lot of relationships around South Florida. So Coach Jefferson is going to be able to make an impact from a recruiting standpoint. And then actually coaching, he's good at that as well. I mentioned Terry Jefferson just having come back over from Jacksonville State. Well, yeah, there's a Jacksonville State connection on the roster because one of the transfer players that Miami added, one of the players we're most excited about, is Zachariah Poiser, who is a stud safety at Jacksonville State, coached by Terry Jefferson, who was the DB coach there. And Coach Jefferson at Jacksonville State also coached second-team All-Conference USA cornerback Derek Carter and cornerback Guymere Latimer, who had a really good season. So Terry Jefferson, to me, is really a nice hire. Now, in adding Terry Jefferson, this is one of the other common questions being asked out there, because we've talked about the potential structures of Miami's coaching staff, right? If Corey Heatherman, the new defensive coordinator is probably also going to coach the linebackers because that's his background, linebackers coach, right? So now do we have 2 openings to fill at defensive backs coach? Already one of those has been filled with Zach Etheridge, who Miami hired and named DB's coach. Our understanding is, at least the buzz has been, that Coach Etheridge is likely to focus on the cornerbacks, and Miami could still be looking for a safeties coach to fill an on-field role with him. So we believe that that opening is still in existence, that Terry Jefferson is going to be an assistant DB's coach, technically an analyst, is not going to be filling that final on-field role. So I strongly feel that Coach Jefferson coming home to Miami and coming back to South Florida makes Miami's coaching staff stronger, but there still are some roles to fill. The defensive staff is not completely done yet. Miami's made really good additions there with DC Corey Heatherman and DB's coach Zach Etheridge. And of course, you still have Jason Taylor on the staff, which is very strong. They may also add another DB's coach to work with him, but I don't believe that Terry Jefferson is going to be filling one of those on-field roles. So there still is more to come on Miami's defensive coaching staff. Now, I do want to address this as far as I know, because there are other rumors about Miami assistant coaches. One of these rumors that came up the other day could possibly see an assistant coach at the U being a candidate to go elsewhere. So as you know, there is an offensive coordinator opening at The Ohio State University because Chip Kelly left Ohio State to make $6 million a year to coach the offense in Las Vegas for the Raiders. So he's gone. And Pete Nakos from On3, who's a good reporter, put this out there earlier this week. He put out 4 candidates on kind of a hot board, candidates for the Ohio State OC job. He listed Brian Hartline, who's the current wide receivers coach at Ohio State, one of the top recruiters in the country. We can thank Hartline for Jeremiah Smith not being in Miami and being in Ohio State instead. So Brian Hartline is on the list. He also put Miami's Shannon Dawson on that list, along with Akron head coach Joe Moorhead, who's an accomplished offensive coordinator, worked under Cristobal at Oregon, and also current Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein. So those were the 4 names that Nakos put out there for possible Ohio State OCs. Now, I know, like, Miami fans, you'll hear that and you'll freak out because we really like Shannon Dawson. I mean, Dawson just, coached the number 1 offense in the country this past year. He's doing a good job. You want that continuity. I'll be real with you. At this very moment, I don't really have much of any concern for Dawson leaving Miami. I've tried to get the buzz from the Ohio State side, and it seems as though the expectation there is, and this could obviously change, but that Brian Hartline could end up getting promoted there because guess what? I mean, with how well he recruits and how well he coaches wide receivers, Ryan Day wants to keep that dude happy. You want to keep that dude happy and not looking for, promotions at other places, because if you lose Brian Hartline, you lose a lot of your wide receiver recruiting. So most of the buzz seems to be for Hartline getting promoted. And outside of that Pete Nakos report of naming a few potential candidates, I haven't really seen or heard any buzz about Miami losing Shannon Dawson, because guess what? Dawson seems really happy at Miami. Miami seems really happy with him. If eventually down the road, a head coaching job somewhere were to come up, you obviously wouldn't blame him for going somewhere for a promotion. But I don't feel like he's going to be taking OC jobs elsewhere. I'm also not ignoring the fact that OC at Ohio State is a really big job. I'm not stupid. I understand that that's a really big job, but this is not something that I'm worried about. I think Miami is going to keep rolling with Coach Dawson, and that continuity is going to be there. Remember, he also coaches the quarterbacks in addition to being the offensive coordinator. Dawson's got a really good relationship with Luke Nickel, who's coming in as a promising true freshman, and Dawson was instrumental, of course, in Carson Beck coming to Miami. So I'm not really worried about that one. But I'll tell you guys, I'm excited for spring football opening up in less than a month now, March 3rd. When we come back, because you guys are buzzing for this. Who are we watching out for? Players that have an opportunity to go out there, show out, raise their stock. I'm going to give you 5 returning Miami veterans, 5 transfers, 5 young ascending players, and 5 true freshmen who I think have an opportunity to carve out playing time immediately. These are 20 names. I'm going to be watching like a hawk out there when spring football begins. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Folks, I know you're keeping it locked to the Game Time app. Guys, this is the best spot. If you're looking for tickets to the big game this Sunday, you can find the best possible deals and the best possible prices at Game Time. For our South Floridians out there, you're looking for Celtics at Miami Heat tickets coming up. You can get them starting at $73. Ottawa Senators at Florida Panthers in a couple of days, starting at $26. You are getting the best deals always on the Game Time app. And folks, with Game Time picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It creates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. Guys, I'm telling you, the best part about Game Time, you're covered with the lowest price guarantee on Game Time. If you find a better deal somewhere else, Game Time will refund you 110% of the difference. So that's always the best deal. It's Game Time. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Guys, I love to get the panoramic view from my seat right there in the Game Time app before I buy. The seat view feature is a game changer. So if you're ready to make your next event even better, download the Game Time app, create an account, and when you use our code Locked On College, they're going to give you $20 off your first purchase. That makes the deal even better. Terms apply. Again, that's code Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I host that show. We take you around the conference, all the drama, the lawsuits, the ESPN contracts, the actual football and basketball, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, all right, folks, we know that spring football is going to be opening up at Green Tree in the indoor practice facility March 3rd. That's a Monday, March 3rd at the U. There's going to be 15 practices, which will culminate practice number 15. It's going to be that spring game, which for the second straight year will be on campus at Cobb Stadium. I thought they did a great job putting it on there last year. April 12th is going to be the spring game. Now, the earlier practices up until the spring game, it's not going to be open to the public. Media members are going to get some access. So I will do whatever I can when I'm out there covering practices, giving you guys the scoop on, who's showing out, who's playing well, who looks promising out there. So I'm already starting to get my notes ready for players I'm going to be watching in spring ball. And I thought, why not kind of divide them into categories? Veterans who have been at the U for a few years, who I really feel like are players to watch. Incoming transfers, Miami's got a lot of those. Young players who have been on the roster but haven't played much, who I feel are ascending. And then why not give you 5 true freshmen as well? Because I think some of these true freshmen can absolutely make an impact. So let's start with the veterans, right? Guys that I'm going to be closely looking at out there. And listen, some of these are obvious, but I think that there are players who have already done well at Miami who can really start carving out their legacy this year. So I'm going to first look at Mark Fletcher. I'm going to be watching Fletch out there because, he's already had an important role for the past 2 seasons at Miami, but by all intents and purposes, we expect him to be the featured back, right? Miami's going to use a rotation, but Fletcher's the guy we expect to start most of the games. Can Mark Fletcher truly ascend to become one of the elite backs in the entire country? Again, there's going to be other backs who are going to contribute. Jordan Lyle, perhaps Chris Wheatley-Humphrey this year could step into a bigger role. Gerard Pringle, who we'll talk about, Miami brought in as a true freshman. But, Mark Fletcher, at times, he was able to kind of be the 1-2 punch with Damian Martinez this past year. Can Mark Fletcher really ascend to true stardom this season? Another one who's going to be the full-time starting left tackle this year, I'm going to be watching Markel Bell very closely. Now, Bell played a lot more last season than we thought he would because Jalen Rivers got injured early on, missed a lot of time, and so Bell ended up getting thrust for kind of half the season as Miami's starting left tackle. And then even when Rivers came back from injury, Bell still played a lot. Miami thinks very highly of him. I think he could end up, really becoming a high NFL draft pick next year, assuming he has a really good season at Miami. So Markel Bell is one to watch. Wesley Besaint at linebacker. He's heading into his final season, senior season at the U. We're also wondering what his role is going to look like with a few defensive changes under Corey Heatherman. Is he going to move inside to middle linebacker? Besaint should really be one of the leaders on the defense this year. So that's someone that he had a strong spring last year. I expect him to do so again, but I'm going to be watching Wesley Besaint. I'm going to be watching Akeem Mesidor. I mean, you kind of felt like Akeem didn't have to come back for another year, but he did, wisely so, because I think he can raise his draft stock by doing so. And Akeem, as described by Mario Cristobal last year, made some sacrifices to help the team, moved inside a lot in order to fill some holes there when he's really a defensive end. He's going to be moving back to DN full-time this year by the sound of it. And Akeem Mesidor, who, his career has been affected by injuries to this point. If he can have a fully healthy, fully dominant season, Akeem is going to be one to watch. And then Reuben Hurricane Bain. This is going to be someone I'm going to have my eyes permanently on number 4 throughout spring football, because Bain, he's draft eligible after this upcoming season. Bain, I thought, some fans kind of unfairly talk about the down year that he had, but he was really affected by injuries in his second season after blowing up as a true freshman. I think Bain can really end up kind of recreating his 2023 and even excelling from that, because he's bigger, stronger, smarter, more mature than he was 2 years ago. So Hurricane Bain is someone, I'm going to be watching very closely during spring. So that's the 5 veterans. Let's go with 5 transfers. Now, I am not putting Carson Beck on this list because we don't expect Beck to be the full participant. He's still recovering from the elbow surgery. I'm sure we're going to see him out there during spring because he's going to be doing mental reps out there, probably some very limited physical stuff, but not a full participant. So I'm not putting Beck on the list for that reason, because he's still recovering. But Xavier Lucas is someone I put at the top of my list. Wisconsin transfer, of course. There was a lot of media buzz and publicity behind his arrival at Miami, and I think he's going to live up to it on the football field. He's already looking good in the offseason workouts. So Xavier Lucas is on my list. Transfer center, James Brockermeyer, because he's at the heart of that offensive line. He's also the only projected starting offensive lineman who's not someone who's back at Miami from last year. So he's the new face. Same reason why I watched Zach Carpenter very closely last spring. I'm going to be watching James Brockermeyer very closely. I think he's a very good center, but he's got to integrate with Miami. Zechariah Poiser. We talked about him. He gets a familiar face out at the practice field with him, with Terry Jefferson being on the staff. Poiser, the safety from Jacksonville State, is someone who could very well end up a starting safety at Miami. He's got to go out on that practice field and earn it. And David Blay, a defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. Miami lost some really important DTs who ran out of eligibility. Simeon Barrow, who we're going to talk about with Phil Russomanno, who I thought was snubbed from the NFL Combine, but I think he's going to be in the NFL. Miami lost Marley Cook and C.J. Clark. So David Blay, is going to have an important role to fill coming in at defensive tackle. And, this is someone I kind of debated putting on my list, because another one, I'm not sure if he's full go in spring football, because I know he was dealing with an injury. I hope he is CJ Daniels, the receiver from LSU. So again, we'll have to circle back to this one. I think and hope he's fully available in spring football. But CJ, obviously, it can be kind of an important leader in that wide receiver room, being a senior and coming in and kind of easing that transition with Carson Beck. Hopefully the two of them can build chemistry. So those are 5 transfers. Here's 5 young ascending players. OJ Frederick, who needs to continue his trajectory, because in a lot of ways he was the lone bright spot in Miami's defensive secondary last year. I mean, I know that the DBs gave up way too much space and way too many big plays, but it usually wasn't OJ Frederick's fault. His coverage grades as a true freshman were through the roof last year. Miami needs to continue to develop him. He needs to continue to work hard and develop. I'll be watching OJ Frederick. I'm going to be watching Jordan Lyle. We talked about Mark Fletcher's role as a returning veteran. Well, Lyle, who we talked about him a lot with Coach Solinger yesterday, Jordan Lyle has a chance to really ascend to bigger heights after having a good true freshman season at running back. Cameron Bobby Pruitt at linebacker. I think Bobby is going to be stepping into a bigger role in his second year in the linebacker rotation. He's got tremendous quickness, speed, and instincts. I'll be watching Armando Blunt. And by the way, congratulations to Armando, because he won an academic award as well. It's like, this is kind of, folks, I'm embarrassed to say, when I was at the University of Miami, they weren't giving Donno any academic awards. I did get an A+ in a geology class, and my professor was very impressed about that. But Armando Blunt, is congratulations to him. The GPA is through the roof, as well as being a physical specimen. He's working hard in the classroom and on the field. I want to see the second-year defensive lineman take a big step next year. Josiah Trader is another one for returning young ascending players. Jojo Trader, we got a real taste of it in that Pop-Tarts Bowl with that 40-yard touchdown that he had, some of the big catches he made. I think Jojo Trader is going to end up being one of the go-to weapons for Carson Beck this year, so I want to see it from him as well. As far as true freshmen go, Miami's got a lot of really good true freshmen, but some of these I'm going to be watching closely for two reasons. Either I think these are guys who have a chance to play a lot right away, or these are guys who maybe were coming in seemingly nursing injuries, who are recovering. On the defensive line, Hayden Lowe and Herbert Scroggins. Now, Lowe is getting buzz all over the place, including here on Locked On Canes. Recently earned his 5th star from 24/7 Sports. He weighs 250 plus pounds already, is a defensive end who could be an instant impact guy. But I think people are also sleeping on Herbert Scroggins out of Savannah, Georgia, another defensive end. I think this dude is one of the more underrated recruits in the country. I think he can come in and make some noise right away. I'll be watching Malachi Toney, not only an early enrollee, but graduated a year early, who I think Malachi Toney from American Heritage could end up being, a gadget guy. Maybe gadget sounds a little bit disrespectful, but a Swiss Army knife type of guy, can make plays at receiver, can also make plays on special teams. You can find creative ways to get him the football in space. I think Malachi Toney is going to be a major impact. Brock Schott, the tight end out of Indiana, someone by all accounts is impressing in the offseason workouts. I think he could, become maybe a weapon right away in the passing game. And, another one who I hope can make an impact year one, and maybe he can, is Jabari Antoine. Jabari Antoine, who, had a lot of time missed in his senior high school season due to a knee injury. I see Jabari Antoine, photos of him doing winter off-season workouts, looking like he's got no restrictions whatsoever. So it seems like Antoine has made a really quick recovery. This is one of the DBs in Miami's freshman class that I'm most excited about. So Jabari Antoine is one I'm going to have my eyes on during those spring workouts. So there you have it. Let me know who I missed. Let me know in the comments below. True freshmen, young ascending players, transfers, veterans, anyone else you're going to be watching or should be watching like a hawk when spring football begins. You let me know in the comments below. We're going to talk about draft stock for Miami Hurricanes players, East-West Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, NFL Scouting Combine coming up. Phil Russomanno is going to join us next year on Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an incredible job taking you through all the big storylines. The offseason doesn't slow down a whole lot, in case you guys haven't noticed. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football, available free wherever you get your podcasts, and like this show, available free on YouTube. But looking forward to talking about the future pro Canes here with friend of the show, Phil Russomanno, my paisano, who was keeping close tabs on the Senior Bowl. We got NFL Scouting Combine invites coming up. I'm rooting for you guys. Remember, the more draft picks, especially high draft picks you get, the better that looks for recruits out of high school. Hey, if I want to go pro, I want to go to Miami. So, Phil, you were covering the Senior Bowl very closely. I guess we should probably start with Elijah Arroyo, because from where I sit, I don't think anybody raised their stock higher than the former Miami tight end.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Elijah Arroyo had one heck of a week for practices this week for the Senior Bowl. I think that he really raised the stock up a lot, not only in the one-on-one drills, but team drills he looked great in, and then also in the game, too, with that 2-point conversion, showing how athletic he is.
Where did you have on your draft chart? Where before the Senior Bowl week? Where did you kind of think he was going to get taken, and do you think now he could be a first or maybe second rounder at the very worst?
I would say before I had him around like the 40s in terms of like my big board that I made, but I would say after the week that he could creep into the first round. Like definitely raise the stock up a lot.
Man, I would hope so. Damian Martinez was one that seemed to have a really good week of practice. Didn't end up playing in the Senior Bowl game. Do you think maybe he kind of decided I've probably raised my stock enough in practice, and kind of where do you see him now?
Yeah, from what I've seen too, he was always the first player on the field and the last one off. So that's always a good sign, especially for like leadership, different scouts that are there. Shows that he's really a team player. I think when you sit out the game like that after you have a great week of practice, part of it comes from like your agent, part of it comes from teams themselves. So I think he definitely is in a good spot, like since he was able to sit out and be able to get ready for the combine and take that next step to the NFL eventually.
What about Xavier Restrepo? Because one of the things that I know Miami fans have been screaming this for the last couple of years about, just how underrated he is, and of course his size and stature has a lot to do with that. And then I started to notice, Phil, a lot of the media types that were covering the Senior Bowl started to say, "Hey, I think this is like the most underrated receiver in the class." I'm like, yeah, we've been saying that for years, and nobody listened to us.
Yeah, just as we've known, Xavier Restrepo is an incredible route runner that continued into the Senior Bowl to the point where during the game itself, they brought him in during like a red zone play, had him like run kind of like an out towards like the end of the end zone to the outside side, and then the tight end was wide open. They thought it was a pick play because of how good of a route it was, and then after they saw the route, they were like, "Oh yeah, this is a great route." So can't say it's a penalty. So, but as we know,
Anyone? Yeah,
yeah,
right.
amazing.
And anything or anyone else of note in terms of Miami representation at the Senior Bowl? And of course, we also had guys at the East-West Shrine, including my guy Andy Borregales, who I thought should have been at the Senior Bowl, especially with the Florida State kicker out there missing kicks. I'm like, where's Andy?
He got robbed twice because he should have been a Groza finalist to begin with, and then they didn't bring him to
Yeah.
the Senior Bowl. But from what I saw for Shrine, he met with 28 teams, so that's always a really good sign.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, someone we didn't see participate at the Senior Bowl because really had nothing to gain by doing it is Cam Ward. And I've noticed, Phil, that the odds for him being the first overall draft pick to Tennessee keep growing, right? He was in the plus money. Now I'm looking at either minus 105 or minus 125, depending on which sports book you look at. It seems like Miami's about to have themselves the top overall pick.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's looking like it's going to be the case. I know 40% of money right now is on Cam Ward going number one overall. So it's looking like the odds of him going number one overall is high. The question is now is if he is going one overall, if it's going to be to the Titans or not. So that's the next step to see if they're going to trade out of that pick.
Someone, I'm curious as to your take of it. I've been asked about Tyler Barron by a few writers who cover NFL teams. Like, hey, maybe this is a guy we could possibly grab at some point in the NFL draft. And it's like it's hard to really describe Tyler Barron's season at Miami because like he started off so hot, and a couple games early on in the season, like the Florida game, it looked like the guy is unblockable and unstoppable, and then at certain points throughout the season, kind of disappeared from the stat sheet a little bit. And so I know he seemed to have some productive workouts at the Senior Bowl. So what do you think the future could hold for Tyler Barron, if he's going to be drafted or not?
Yeah, and I definitely think he's going to be drafted. I have him anywhere from the 4th to like the 6th round. That could be a little bit higher, like given like how he interviews and everything at the combine too. So the big question though is going to be like where like he's going to fit in like what system. So I know a lot of like those attacking teams are going to be looking for an edge rusher like Tyler Barron because his traits are off the chart. He had a good week of practice too. I think he was like one of the players of the week for the Shrine Bowl for like the all team that they did. It was like 2 Canes that we had on there for like the entire week, but I do think that he's going to be in a good position to go to a team that's going to utilize like his strengths to the best of his ability for sure.
So here's the list of former Hurricanes who have gotten invites to the NFL Scouting Combine, and of course, all of these were guys who participated in the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl. Well, except for Cam Ward, who got that invite but didn't partake of the Senior Bowl. So Cam Ward gets the Scouting Combine invite. Xavier Restrepo, Jalen Rivers. That's another one I want to circle back to. Andy Borregales, Damian Martinez, Kiko Maui Noah, Elijah Arroyo, Jacoby George, Sam Brown, Tyler Barron. But let's circle back to Jalen Rivers, Phil. What's kind of been the buzz on Jalen, and where do you think he might end up being drafted? And where do you think NFL teams see him as more of a guard kicking back inside, despite him playing mostly tackle the last couple of years at Miami?
I think that's going to be the case. That they're going to move him to guard eventually in the NFL. But the good thing is just the way that Alex Mirabal trains all the linemen, that they can pretty much play any position. That really shined throughout the Senior Bowl, because they can put him anywhere and he's going to do well. So I definitely think it helped his draft stock. It's interesting because it goes to a lot of traits when it gets to linemen. So it could be anywhere from like the 3rd round to the 7th round. It's just such a wide kind of variety it could be. So it really does depend too on like how his combine goes, how he tests, how he interviews, all that good stuff.
Are there anybody on this list of combine invites that you think is a fringe of getting drafted or not? Like Sam Brown, maybe? Do you see him as like a late pick or a possible undrafted free agent? Anyone else? I mean, obviously for Borregales, like he's very deserving, but kicker jobs are at a premium, right? Do you think any of these guys may go undrafted?
I mean, out of all of them, it could be like Sam Brown, but at the same time, though, the speed that he has, teams at the next level could look at him as more of like a kick returner too, which is like something that he didn't do too much at Miami, but could be something that we can see a lot more at the next level for sure on that one. But it really just depends. Like if he comes in and runs like incredibly well at the combine, it's gonna do a lot for him.
Do you think did Simeon Barrow get snubbed of a combine invite? Because it's a lot of physical tools, and honestly, I know Miami's defense in general wasn't good enough last year, but there were a lot of games, Phil, where I felt like Simeon Barrow was the best player on the field out of those 11. Were you surprised he didn't get the combine invite?
Yeah, it's funny when they showed like all the different people who got invited to the combine from I was looking, I was like, did they like forget to put the graphic in for Simeon Barrow? Because I was shocked about that personally. I definitely think he's gonna get drafted. I could see him going as high as the 4th round too, or 3rd round,
Ooh.
depending on how he does.
Well, I hope that works out for him, honestly, because he worked incredibly hard this past year, Barrow, and he had a one and done season at Miami. He wanted to put himself in a better situation from what he was at in Michigan State, and I thought he played hard and played well.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. There's games that he did look like the best defensive player on the field, so that's why it's so shocking. Because out of like everything that you see like the one shining light for some of the games, and that's the person you don't invite. It doesn't make any sense to me personally, but.
What about Kiko? And Kiko seemed like he had some good Shrine Bowl practices. He had a great 2023 season at Miami, down year in 2024. But what's been the buzz on Kiko?
Yeah, definitely. He looked like he had a great Shrine Bowl week, and then in the game too, he had a fumble recovery, and then almost a second one, but they ruled it an incomplete pass. So he definitely has a nose for the ball, which is a good sign. I think a lot of it too was the injury that he had coming into the season. You can tell that he kind of like progressed like better towards the end of the year. And then during like the All-Star game this week or last week, he looked a lot better. Like he looked like back to his 2023 form for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with these Canes. So you have 10 combine invites, hopefully 10 or maybe 11 players drafted to the NFL. We're expecting the number 1 overall pick to be Cam Ward. So hopefully the future pro Canes end up getting selected and prove their worth in the coming months. We appreciate you, Phil Russomanno. Check him out. He's a sports reporter and a triple Cane. Like you got more degrees than Cam McCormick. How's that even possible?
No, I transferred in, and the pandemic gave me another chance to come back. So got to double it up there.
I'm only a single Cane. This guy puts me. I only had time for 1 degree after my bachelor's. I'm like, I said no more tests for me, man. I am out. Great stuff as always here by Phil. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We'll talk to you next time on another episode right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.